This is Mike Loveday with studentsports.com, and I'm here with Isabelle Dadd, and she's got a pretty interesting story because she's a Maryland native who is entering her freshman year in high school down in Georgia at the Westminster School. But she had a pretty interesting summer. So Isabel, why don't you kind of talk a little bit about what your summer was and what it was like for you?
I went to a, a camp at UNC for 3 days, 2.5 days, 2.5 days, uh, and that where we played with 17s, 17s, 16s, and 15s, and some 14s, I think. That was fun. But then right from there, I went straight up to Maryland, and because we don't have a house up there anymore, we had to stay with a family friend. So that was kind of awkward and kind of new to have to stay with somebody and not be able to just go back home. And we drove every Monday and Wednesday to practice, and we went to 2 tournaments that weekend. We stayed for 2 weeks, and that was insane because everybody that I knew already had plans and was doing everything. So my weeks basically consisted of just lacrosse, practicing, running, going to practice, seeing my teammates, trying to transition back into my spot, and figuring out how to practice with my team again. That was absolutely a totally new experience
Yeah,
since
and
sixth
we should
grade.
clarify, your club team's the Skywalkers up here in Maryland, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you mentioned the UNC team camp, so it sounded like you were playing with kids a few years older than you. What was that kind of like? Was that intentional, or was it just kind of the demographic that happened to be there?
That was just what happened to be there, who happened to be deciding to sign up and go. But it was so intimidating because I'd never played with anybody outside of my graduation year, and it was crazy to think that like I was being compared and paired with these other players that were absolutely fantastic and were already getting recruited and were juniors and seniors, and it was amazing.
Yeah. So, but you had fun.
I had a lot of fun. That was great.
Now, talk a little bit. You mentioned the summer and trying to get into your spot at Skywalkers and kind of transition to that. I think from talking to your mom before, you guys actually would come back to Georgia and then go back to Maryland. Was that correct for a while?
Yes, we stayed in Maryland for a first stretch for about a week and a half, and then we came back down to Georgia for like 3 days, and then drove back to Maryland for 2 weeks and stayed with my brother. And that was just, it's like stressful because you have to unpack and pack, and if you forget anything, it's like there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah. So was there any as far as your club team, did your club team have any insight or help to kind of help you with the transition? Obviously, traveling back and forth's got to be a little bit of a challenge and a little bit of a wear.
I actually got new coaches this year, but they were awesome. They didn't know me as well as coaches that had welcomed me back because I'd had them in previous years, but they were so understanding of like my situation and what I was like having to transition from and having to drive and understand like I guess transitioning into the culture of the team again. And they were so understanding of that, and it was amazing to be able to be with my team again, even though the coaches were kind of like new, and that was strange.
Yeah. Now, I know you're planning on staying with playing club with Skywalkers at least through the next summer of 2014. So have you haven't taken a moment to think about the what that's going to be like? Because I know the fall tournaments are coming up. So you'll be in high school starting your freshman year, and I wasn't that long ago that I remember starting that, and that's scary enough in and of itself. So have you thought about the challenges and how that's going to pan out?
Well, I know I definitely have to miss so much practice, and that's definitely a challenge to be able to miss so much practice, then come back and be like, hey, I'm ready to play. And fall tournaments plus freshman year and like having to study, I stress a lot, I guess, already because I overthink too much, I guess. But with the lacrosse and then school, it's like one big just mess that I have to like sort through and make sure. But this summer is going to be absolutely wild. I already feel it.
At least then you don't have to worry about going to school.
Yeah,
One less thing to
definitely.
take off your plate. And I know you mentioned a couple of the fall tournaments, and obviously the summer tournaments are always huge. And obviously you're just entering your freshman year, but after talking with your mom, I know how much emphasis she placed on kind of this fall and this summer as far as like kind of getting you out there and making sure the colleges know who you are and everything. But you have an interesting story in that you already have a brother and a sister. Your brother's already played in college, and your sister's currently playing in college now. So one talk, and I know you went on some of their visits. So talk a little bit of what it's been like through your life to actually have already gone on some college visits. On both boys lacrosse and on the girls side.
Um, it was when I went on college visits, I was a lot younger, and I guess I wasn't thinking about being recruited as much. But now thinking about it, I'm so glad I went on those, even though I dreaded spending my weekend somewhere other than laying in my bed at 10 a.m. um, but I'm so glad I did because now I get to see a real feel for the schools and the coaches and how like coaches will try and pull you one way and push you another. And it's really a nice idea to know to already have those back thing, I guess, channels to know what schools I've already looked at and what schools I've already seen that I think are very nice, and I like the atmosphere based on what I've seen with my brother and sister, even though I wasn't allowed to go as many places as they were. But it's definitely going to be a big advantage, in my opinion, because I've already seen what I like. I have an idea of what I like in a school, and I also have an idea about what my brother and sister have told me about what to look for and what to be able to perceive and like understand and all of the like underlying things to look at.
Yeah. You mentioned looking back on some of those visits. Is there anything that stands out from when you went on those prior visits that you're kind of thinking back and be like, wow, I'm really glad I learned that now rather than through my first time through?
I'm really glad I've learned about like the difference a coach can be on the field and recruiting you, because that can be so drastic that it would completely blow my mind and kind of push me out of it, I guess, because I've learned like off the field, the coach will do anything to get you to come to their school, to be on their team, to push them up to the next level. And on the field, they will absolutely destroy you to the point where your clothes are soaked for like 3 days after your practice. You don't want to shower because you'll get the shower more dirty than you. And it's kind of just a nice thing to know that how the difference between a coach recruiting you and wanting you and a coach and what they're actually like coaching you.
Yeah. So I'm sure you're a little bit ahead of the game than probably most incoming freshmen. Most families only do this one time through. So, but kind of transition, because I know I don't want to stress too much of the recruiting since you are just entering your freshman year and you have more than a few years to think about all that stuff. But let's talk a little bit about Westminster. Obviously, it'll be your first year at the school, but they're always one of the Georgia powers. Talk a little bit about how much, or not how much, but what you kind of knew about the program going into it, and what you kind of see as your role, coming in as a freshman, coming from Maryland, so there's probably a little bit of a different style of play, I would imagine, there as well.
I actually came in last year. I was actually the only new girl in the 8th grade, but going into the Westminster high school lacrosse program with no idea of what's going on, because I think I only saw 1 or 2 games last year. But I do know that it's not as like fast-paced and as physical as more northern lacrosse is, because the refs are newer to the game that I've seen. But the Westminster lacrosse program is amazing. We've won the past, I want to say, 4 years of state championships. So I know that I'm definitely coming into one of the best lacrosse programs I can, and that's really like assuring to know, because that's good. I guess. What am I trying to say? It's good because it's nice to be able to have some reassurance that I'm not losing some of all of the like high level of play and transitioning into something that'll bring me down more than boost me up, because I definitely think Westminster is the place to be for lacrosse. It's top notch.